Part 40. Infinite Doomsday Start Draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 391. Cannot open the logistics space. Google search reading. She can only use the remote terminal to buy weapons directly in the system store. Then, even if it is to set up a message board in the logistics space and leave a message to Ruger on the blackboard, Tia can't do it. How can she contact Ruger? Well, direct contact is indeed not possible. However, she can judge the distance between her and Ruger by whether the logistics space can be opened. Under normal circumstances, if both of them are on the ground, then as long as the straight line distance between the two is within 1 kilometer, Tia can basically open the logistics space. However, if there is an obstacle between the two, such as a wall, the distance will be lower. If it is in a place with many buildings, such as the inside of a monastery where no buildings have been blown up before, the distance will even be sharply reduced to 500 meters or even shorter. Generally speaking, sharing the system logistics space is like connecting to the Wi-Fi hotspot signal shared by Ruger. And the remote terminal in Tia's hand is like a secondary card that shares traffic with Ruger's main card. Although the two cannot be directly connected, they can share traffic. Based on this feeling, Tia guessed that in the area of the underground tomb with thick poisonous clouds, she and Ruger should get within 100 or 200 meters to open the logistics space. So, she relied on this method to judge how long it would take for Ruger to arrive. Of course, this place is not far from the ground. The poisonous cloud can block the system's Wi-Fi signal, but it can't block the sound waves. Sarah had already used the whistle code of the Rugers to inquire about the situation above. Tia herself can also check the news on the ground by sharing the vision of the old Noisy who is still controlling the artillery on the ground. So they all knew that Ruger had actually descended underground from the highly toxic cave corroded by Andariel on the northwest side dozens of minutes ago. They also knew that he probably found something else underground over there, so he couldn't get here as soon as possible. It was because of this that Sarah asked this question. As mentioned before, when Sarah asked this question before, Tia would say early morning at a glance. Sarah had no choice but to muster up her courage and continue to fight with the poisonous Andariel. But this time, Tia answered, well, it should take a while. And while she was talking, she seemed to be distracted. It seemed that she was busy with something at the same time. Sarah in front suppressed her doubts and thought, could it be that she had contacted Ruger? In this way, she didn't even deliberately encourage herself, and a warm current naturally rose in her chest. In an instant, the whole person swept away the previous fatigue and became energetic again. With a loud shout, she raised her short spear and rushed towards Andariel at a speed 3 times faster than before. At the same time, the damage to her iron armor seemed to be repaired instantly. Tia saw that she was like a chicken blood and instantly filled up the 3 color bars of red, blue, and green blood demon body, and she curled her lips with a bit of taste. After secretly complaining, "What's the big deal?" he threw a bunch of bombs and continued to calm down. Just as Sarah guessed, she could open the shared logistics space of Ruger. She actually exchanged a bunch of materials and erected a large message board for Ruger's logistics space bunker facility vehicle manufacturing workshop. And through her version of telekinesis, she remotely controlled the industrial robots inside and wrote to Ruger on the message board. Using telekinesis to remotely control the robots and equipment in the logistics space has always been Ruger's strongest personal ability. However, he learned the ability of telekinesis from Tia. So in turn, when the relationship between the two reached the most intimate stage, Ruger also shared part of the logistics space authority with Tia, and Tia could naturally use his trick. But there is still a big difference in their styles. They both discovered this point from the day when Ruger learned telekinesis from Tia. Ruger's telekinesis is good at fine control, but slightly lacks power. So he can even directly control the unpowered industrial robot arm in the logistics space to play with the needle there. However, if he controls the items outside the logistics space, he can't even actuate a rifle into the air. Forget about the floating guns that are directly controlled by the human body. There is no problem with remote triggers and control buttons. Tia is just the opposite. She has strong power, but poor local control. Her mind can even throw a large bomb weighing more than 10 kilograms hundreds of meters away. This is also the most important reason why she likes to use big pineapples. In this way, she is a super ace grenadier. However, relatively speaking, let alone remote control of an unpowered robot to write, she has to spend a lot of energy to control the impulse to throw this arm like a grenade. So at this time, she is remotely inputting action instructions to the industrial robot to let it help write on the message board. In this process, she only needs to control her strength and not break the keyboard that inputs instructions to the industrial robot. Even so, this was still a very difficult task for her, and she had to concentrate most of her attention on it. Luckily, before she had finished writing a sentence or 5 words, the other robot came over and continued writing on the message board. In the blink of an eye, a complete sentence was written. The following questions can be expressed by writing horizontal or vertical lines. Is it Tia who is remotely controlling the robot arm to write? Tia simply controlled the pen and wrote it on the message board crookedly. Very good. The robot arm even erased her previous answer. She looked envious. The situation over there is very bad, and you need support urgently. Tia thought about it, wrote a first, but then wrote a. However, compared to, is 2 or 3 times longer. I see, that is to say, the situation over there is worse, but not particularly bad. 1. This time Tia's answer was simple. I know. I will speed up and rush over as soon as possible, at most 3 to 5 minutes. 1. Then, the robot arm over there stopped moving. Tia understood that it was likely that Ruger had already accelerated his work. In this case, she also regained her focus, rubbed her hands, and exchanged a bunch of big bombs. She sent a bunch of round pineapple-like birthday gifts to the newly bred monsters around her, and then rushed to Andariel, who was fighting with Sarah with the rest. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi Ji. Chapter 392. Seeing Tia rushing into the battle group so majestically, Sarah instantly received her subtext, Lugger is coming soon. In this way, Sarah felt more confident, and the short spear in her hand stabbed more fiercely and at more tricky angles. And when Tia saw that she understood, she threw the big bomb in her hand like it was free. Most of the warheads were high explosive bombs, but the pre-installed fragments were all tungsten core small arrows. There were not many, but the armor-piercing power was extremely strong. It was a weapon she prepared specifically for Andariel. The 2 of them burst out in an instant, not to mention that the average lifespan of the newly bred poisonous companion monsters around was suppressed to the order of seconds, and it was still in the single digits. Even Andariel over there was quite overwhelmed. This made the toxic Demon King very uncomfortable. It would be fine if he was suppressed on the ground. After all, there he was surrounded by the rogues, and he had to face the overly strong magic power dissipation on the ground. But underground, in the poisonous cloud, in her own home, she was still being beaten by the opponent. The new Demon King, don't you want to save face? Andariel was getting angrier and angrier the more she thought about it, and she wanted to just go all out and use her ultimate move again. However, every time she looked for an opportunity to charge up, she would be beaten by the 2 hard-shelled guys on the opposite side who attacked and rescued the enemy in tacit cooperation, and she dared not turn back to block. After a few times, the Demon King was really in danger, as if she was the human who shouldered the heavy responsibility and went deep into the demon cave to fight with her back to the wall. And the 2 over there were the Demon Kings who were domineering and arrogant. However, after 2 rounds like this, Andariel was much calmer. When she calmed down and looked at the situation in front of her, She soon stopped being anxious. Yes, she seemed to be being beaten by the opponent now, but that was because the opponent would die without this kind of stormy style of play. Their strength was getting less and less, and their armor was getting more and more broken. Time was still on her side. With this in mind, Andariel changed her previous mode of constantly looking for opportunities to counterattack, and took the initiative to use a strategy similar to defensive counterattack. She only attacked at the critical moment when she had to attack. The mental energy saved was used to conserve energy and seize the opportunity. Not to mention, Sarah and the others immediately felt the pressure after her behavior pattern changed. The previous battle between the two sides was like a round-based system where you cut me with a knife and I stab you with a sword. There is a return, there is defense, and by calculating the values, you can roughly judge the trend of the battle. In this way, you can have a clear mind and target. But now, Andariel seems to have become a wall that only knows how to defend and has a very thick blood bar. How can Tia and Sarah increase their output? In the end, it was calculated that it would take at least several centuries to empty the super long blood bar of that wall. How can we fight this? There is no way to fight this at all. After a few more moves, the situation on the field was still barely a draw, but the more impatient party changed from Andariel to Tia and her partner. As they fought, Tia suddenly shouted anxiously with a bit of panic, "Sarah, how are you? You have to hold on." When Andariel heard this, she thought that the moment she had been waiting for had finally come, and immediately looked at the short spear warrior called Sarah. As a result, she became confused after seeing this. Because Sarah not only did not look like she was about to give up, but she became more and more courageous, and the short spear in her hand was still fierce, which put a lot of pressure on her. What's going on? Well, maybe this guy is already at the end of his strength, and her teammates over there are more familiar with her, so they saw it first? No matter what, anyway, I'm ready to take action at any time, it will definitely not be wrong. Andariel secretly accumulated strength, and Sarah's face over there also became very ugly, but it was covered by the mask of the Iron Man armor, so no one could see it. However, she did not look ugly because Tia revealed her state of being at the end of her strength. On the contrary, her face was flushed and her heart was rippling. She was the kind of enchanting and charming woman who would paralyze the traffic on the street if she walked on the main road. Because Sarah had heard the sentence and understood the meaning behind it. Tia had said the sentence before, during the long battle that established the relationship between the three people. But at that time, the target of her words was Ruger, who fought against Sarah with her. At that time, Sarah herself was the target of the joint attack by the other two. Her reaction was not much different from Andariel now, and they both felt that the person who needed to hold on in Tia's words was no longer a threat. To be fair, it was understandable that Sarah had such thoughts at that time. After all, not to mention that the two women in the three-person battle were the reincarnations of demon gods, even with their physical fitness as Nephilim, they would naturally look down on Ruger, an ordinary person. So, when Sarah heard what Tia said, she didn't care about Ruger at all, but instantly shifted her main focus to attacking Tia's strategic vitals, so as to seize the great opportunity when she was distracted and change the passive situation at that time. Well, her choice was more risky than Andariel's. As a result, before she could use the God's Hand skill, Ruger, who was ignored by her, launched a fierce attack on the strategic vitals behind her. For a moment, Sarah Andariel, the only female among the 7 demon kings of hell, the supreme commander of all succubi, the encyclopedia of postures, the former demon king of pain, and the current goddess of pleasure, was beaten to a pulp by the 9-1 kung fu of a mortal. No matter how she tried, she never thought that Ruger, who was originally ignored by her, would have such a skill. She was unexpectedly put into a passive position, and Tia, who relied on false words to deceive her, immediately seized the opportunity and launched a fierce attack on her from the other side. That short confrontation was the most tragic fight Sarah had in a normal war, and it was also the moment closest to failure. Because of this experience, when Tia used the same trick again and said that sentence again, Sarah instantly understood her intention. She just wanted her to learn from Ruger at that time and pretend to be defeated. So, after a set of rainstorm pear blossom spears, she was originally going to follow up with a move of sweeping thousands of troops to attack instead of defend, and then add a long rainbow piercing the sun. They all used moves with large power and long postures, taking the opportunity to breathe. As a result, her first move of sweeping across the army seemed to be insufficient, and she fell halfway, instantly opening the middle door, giving Andariel a flaw. The venomous demon king over there still had a scorpion mentality. Although he found that she seemed to be out of strength, he didn't bite the hook directly for the sake of caution. Until Sarah added the move of long rainbow piercing the sun, the tip of the grass was 2 points downward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-chi-ji. Chapter 393. Don't underestimate these 2 points. They just miss the vital point of Andariel. Even if this move hits Duan, it can only cause her some superficial injuries. Google search reading. Seeing that Sarah's physical strength has been so low, even if Andariel is cautious, it is not good to miss the opportunity again and again. She separated 2 poison needle tentacles to block Tia's attack, and attacked Sarah with her front claws to increase her lack of ventilation. At the same time, the other 2 poison needle tentacles gathered together, and instantly condensed into a green light poison ball, pointing to a place behind Sarah. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Just wait for Sarah to be forced back by her claws, and take advantage of her old strength to dissipate and new strength to regenerate, and sting her with a poisonous stinger. With the broken appearance of Sarah's Iron Man armor, this green poison ball would probably kill half of her life. Seeing that one of these 2 difficult people was finally going to be killed by her, Andariel felt a surge of heat in her heart at that moment. But just when she was about to throw the poison ball, the poisonous demon Andariel suddenly felt a faint cold pain in her back. No, this is a trap. Andariel instantly understood the opponent's trick, and before she could throw the green poison ball, her whole body immediately jumped to the side. However, it was too late. With a sound of metal clashing, a tungsten alloy steel needle had penetrated her right abdomen. If she hadn't jumped quickly, the steel needle would have pierced her heart. At this time, the roar of the artillery came slowly. It was Ruger driving the Leopard 2A4. While firing, most of his tank was still in the underground passage, with only one gun barrel sticking out of the passage, pointing at Andariel's back. Duan was attacked by the trap set by the 3 people, and her body was seriously injured. But what was more injured was her pride in being a demon king. In addition to being ashamed and angry, she didn't care about Sarah who was chased and beaten by her before, or Tia who was supporting her, but turned around and threw the green light poison ball on the poison needle tentacles at the tank like a discus. After firing, Ruger didn't want to fight at all, and immediately started the engine and retreated, letting the tank hide behind the cave wall. However, seeing that Duan actually threw the thick green poisonous light ball at him, he didn't hesitate at all, and immediately activated the ejection seat again and escaped from the tank. He knew that the wall of the passage was not enough to stop Duan's move. He thought that the passage itself was created by this move. Sure enough, just as he escaped, the poison ball had penetrated the mud wall and hit the Leopard 2A4. In just a moment, the front half of the tank, the entire gun barrel and most of the turret were corroded into a ball of molten iron. The remaining part, under the corrosion of the green light venom, was still softening and melting like a burning candle, and merged into the molten iron under the car. Hiss X3. The three of them gasped at the same time. Dozong strongman, so terrifying. Oh no. It's poison and magic ball, terrifying like his. At this moment, the three of them felt a little scared, and they dared not imagine what would happen if this move hit them. But the one with the most pressure was Lugger. Not only because he was in mid-air, with no place to borrow strength, he was the most vulnerable target. More importantly, his self-made iron armor did not have the real-time repair ability of Tia and Sarah's original armor. When he installed the bomb on the cave wall before, he relied on the method of returning to the logistics space from time to time to repair it, barely keeping the outer armor intact. But now, if he is entangled by Andariel, he can't hide in the space. At that time, the poisonous cloud in the air alone can kill him at any time. But, things have come to this point, and he can't think too much. Since the situation is critical and there is nowhere to hide, why waste energy thinking about hiding? Insufficient defense and unable to avoid, then he has no choice but to attack. In an instant, he took a deep breath in mid-air, but directly took out a long 88 cannon with only a barrel from the space and pointed it at Andariel. It is said that there is only a barrel, but it actually refers to the gun body, from the muzzle brake, barrel, breech, etc., are all on it. In this way, its weight is still not light. Lugger himself had nowhere to lean on in mid-air, so how could he control this thing directly with his body? In fact, the moment he pulled out the gun, he had already used all his strength to call on his telekinesis ability, just to keep the gun balanced in mid-air for even 0.1 second. In such a short time, the acceleration of gravity was not enough to make him fall too much. But even so, this was the biggest challenge since he mastered the telekinesis ability. His telekinesis could even be expressed as if he said it, like the god of the world in the logistics space. But in the outside world, he could only remotely control the trigger button. However, the 71 caliber 88mm caliber cannon originally weighed 6 tons. Even though he was using a lightweight version now, the total weight was still nearly 1 ton. With such a weight, I'm afraid only Tia's telekinesis, which is good at strength, could lift it. Let Lugger exert force, and he would have broken through his limit if he could hold it for 1 second. But it doesn't matter. Because it definitely won't take that long for the gun to fire and for the bullet to fly out of the muzzle. In fact, it is often said that the life of the gun barrel is actually only 8 seconds. This is the number obtained by multiplying the number of shells in the life of the gun barrel by the time they are in the barrel. A tank gun can fire more than 300 shells in its life. The time each shell stays in the barrel will not exceed 0.27 seconds. Therefore, the 1 second that Ruger fought for was more than enough. Because he had pulled down the firing rod next to the breech block while unfolding the gun. 1 second later, his telekinesis was exhausted and he fell down, and the hardcore armor-piercing bullet in the barrel had once again rushed towards Andariel. This shot was fired just before Duan condensed the magic ball, forcing her to dodge again. But even so, she hated Ruger so much that she still didn't give up the magic ball on the poison needle tentacle. After dodging the cannonball, she immediately threw the thing at Ruger. But she forgot that she and Ruger were not the only ones on the battlefield. While she had only Ruger in her eyes, Sarah behind her had already shot a long rainbow piercing the sun at her again. And this time, the weapon in her hand was no longer the short spear, but the slender and sharp dragon spear. Clang! It was still the same metal clashing. The difference was that this time the long spear went straight through the vibrant and bleeding Demon King's heart in Andariel's left chest. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi Ji. Chapter 394. Ouch! The Demon King is worthy of being a Demon King. Even if the Nephilim, no matter how powerful they are, is severely injured like this, they will inevitably weaken and fall down, waiting to die on the spot. However, Andariel's heart was pierced, and although he cried out in pain, he still retained considerable mobility. It is indeed the heart of the devil that is full of vitality and makes all things flourish. She threw the magic ball towards Lugger with her backhand, and immediately gathered a poison cloud on the spot and fired another poisonous nova. Nova magic creates a circular or even spherical wave of magic energy with the caster as the center of the circle. Wherever the fluctuations go, they will be attacked by magic of this attribute. Because it is a range attack, the magic damage within the unit area is not high. But a poisonous nova fired by a Demon King in a rage, even if the damage is not high, is definitely capable of killing ordinary Nephilim in an instant. As soon as this 360-degree poisonous light wave with no blind spots came out, even TIA's Hala fled backwards. Fortunately, this type of nova magic covers a wide angle, and because the magic power is dispersed, the coverage radius is not very high, so the two of them easily escaped beyond the attack range of the poisonous nova. But Ruger's side is much more dangerous. Although the poisonous nova couldn't hit him, he still had the poisonous magic ball thrown by Andariel before. In addition, he himself is not in good condition. He had previously used telekinesis to lift the cannon body, which weighed nearly a ton, but he had inevitably fallen into a state of semi-exhaustion. Seeing the magic ball flying closer and closer, Lugger could not guarantee that the tubular gun body in front of him could help him block all the magic. Fortunately, opportunities always come to those who are prepared. The back of the Lugger Tegaman armor still has a small rocket booster for daily use. This thing has low power and little fuel, so it would be difficult to drag him up even if he is so powerful. But on the way down, it was much easier to help him fall faster. Because the acceleration when rising must first be higher than the acceleration of gravity before he can fly. But if it is only a little higher than the acceleration of gravity, then his takeoff speed can be comparable to that of a snail and a turtle. But if he walks downwards, the acceleration provided by the rocket booster is superimposed on the acceleration of gravity, and his instantaneous acceleration can be doubled. Relying on this extra g, he finally hit the ground before Andariel's poisonous light ball flew in. Yes, although he escaped the poisonous light ball, he was also slapped on the ground in a herringbone shape due to posture issues. That's fine too. At least the remains of the 88 cannon, which had been corroded into molten iron by the ball of light, only spattered on his back armor and did not cause any damage to his more important front half. The back armor can be peeled off and replaced along with the booster. Taking advantage of the gap between lying on the ground and not getting up, Luge hurriedly drank a bunch of potions for himself. The most important thing is the 3-color supplementary potion for the red, blue, and green blood demon body. There is an automatic injector in the homemade Tegaman armor, so you don't have to worry about being corroded by poisonous clouds when you need to remove the armor for use. After a few bottles of potion, he finally felt better. He raised his eyes to look at Andariel, only to see that guy running towards him while releasing poisonous nova. It was a complete attitude that he would never give up until he was killed. What does Ruger think? Sarah, who shot you through the heart, is still waiting behind you. Why didn't you attack her first, instead of attacking me? She just took the spear away from your heart, doesn't it hurt? Don't you hate it? But he didn't have a chance to say this, and even if he did, Andalil would probably not listen. The steel needle I just used was still too insulting and not lethal enough. Okay, in that case, let's correct this mistake. Lugger, who had just caught his breath, felt furious, but he immediately produced an artillery piece. It is still a long 8.8 cannon with a caliber of 71 times. This time it is no longer just the gun body, but also the gun mount and the trailer under the gun mount. Even before this thing was released, the angle had been adjusted. After it was released, Lugger immediately activated his telepathy and pulled the firing lever next to the breech block. With a bang, another hardcore armor-piercing bullet headed towards Andariel. The poisonous Demon King over there did not expect that the weak human opposite could actually summon such an artillery weapon. He was startled by the cannon and hurriedly dodged again. But being attacked by artillery for the third time in a row also taught her the skills to deal with such things. While dodging, she casually threw out another poisonous light ball. This light ball does not have a long storage time and does not condense much magic power. It is more difficult to directly kill Sarashia and the two of them, but it can still kill the cannon instantly. But this time Lugger also learned the lesson and hid in the next position while firing the cannon. As a result, the two exchanged their extremes. A shell forced Andariel to hide. The poisonous light ball thrown by Andariel also corroded the cannon completely. The relative distance between the two seemed to have not changed at all. After all, Andariel came with anger and was very dissatisfied with this situation. But before she was ready for the next wave of offensive, she saw the guy on the opposite side repeating his same trick and bringing out another artillery piece. Similarly, a cannonball hit him just after he appeared. Hateful. Andariel cursed secretly and had no choice but to repeat his previous routine, dodging while throwing balls to destroy cannons. This bastard. I don't believe that weapons like yours can be summoned infinitely. Duan cursed in her heart and rushed towards Ruger again. What was waiting for her was naturally another long-barreled 88 cannon. I % you an #at. Andariel, who was furious, even used some dialect in the burning hell to curse. This time, she could no longer suppress her temper. The number of poison balls she threw out increased from 1 to 3, and the target was also moved from the cannon to the 3 positions that Ruger would inevitably choose when dodging. However, Ruger also noticed her change. This time, he did not dodge or jump left and right, but stayed behind the cannon. After the recoil device ejected the empty shell, he manually put another shell into the barrel at a very fast speed. Then, boom. Andariel, % you an #at. She couldn't help cursing. This time, in order to condense 3 magic balls at the same time to block Ruger, she separated 2 of the poison needle tentacles and forearm claws that had been blocking Sarashia's attacks. Her blocking ability instantly dropped by at least 1/3. She was immediately seized by Sarashia, who threw several tungsten core arrow-shaped fragments into the blind spot around her. Originally, she could kill Ruger by taking this set of attacks, and she was not at a disadvantage. In the end, not only did she take these attacks in vain, but she also failed to kill Ruger. On the contrary, she was hit by his tungsten core armor-piercing bullet and had to dodge in embarrassment. That feeling was more than just unpleasant, it was simply a great shame and humiliation. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 395. I don't believe it. After Andalil dodged, his eyes were as red as fire. Today, I want to see how much of that stuff you can have. After scolding him fiercely, Duan once again threw 2 poison balls. She has learned to be good now, and while attacking Lugger with 1 poison ball, she doesn't forget to destroy his artillery with another one, so as to save him from having to reload. In this way, she counted the tentacles as equivalent to 6 arms, which was exactly 2 for each person. No one had less, and no one had more. Sarashia couldn't seize the opportunity to attack her for a while, so she didn't have to worry about her hitting her. But Lugger faced 2 arms, and the pressure increased sharply. The artillery dare not be released, and the feet cannot be stopped to dodge. Moreover, when dodging, he had to feign to make a fake move, so as to lead Andariel's second magic ball in the wrong direction. The excitement was comparable to the penalty shootout in the World Cup final. No, more exciting. Because for things like the World Cup final, the person playing is definitely not XXXX. Watching others play is definitely not the same as playing on the court with yourself. After passing Andariel's magic ball, Lugger dodged out, not daring to waste time, and immediately released another long 88 cannon and fired. Without the restraint of these artillery fire, Andariel would only have an easier time dealing with him. As a result, the battle situation became an infinite loop, an endless waltz. Ruger bombardment. Andalil dodges and hits the ball. Lugger dodges and bombards. The two Sarashia girls over there didn't waste any time and kept looking for opportunities to help him. However, Andalil hated Lugger so much that he was not moved at all. Anyway, she was assigned to tentacle hands, which at least ensured that her vitals would not be hit. As for the attacks on other parts of Sarah's body, she was unable to block them all, and she had no intention of blocking them all, so she just resisted them. Anyway, for her, Lugger must die. What's more, Andariel originally had bronze skin and flaming red hair, but she became so angry that she used green mist poison clouds to expand her magic power, just to keep releasing poison balls at Lugger rapidly, and her hair gradually turned into red. Turned green. Lugger was concentrating on dodging and firing, but suddenly he heard Sarah curse over there for no reason. His heart sank, thinking that Sarah's side had been successfully attacked by Andariel. Just as he was about to launch a big move, such as launching two cannons at the same time, he heard Tia burst into laughter over there. "What's going on?" Luge asked hurriedly. "It's okay," Tia replied with a suppressed smile, "it's just that some people can't stand green hair." Huh, Ruger's head was covered with black lines, and he subconsciously glanced at Andariel, just in time to clearly see her new light green skin with bright green hair. "How green is the hair?" "Well, you basically put a layer of white powder on your face and a large bright red lipstick, and then you can go to the DC house next door to tell a joke, perform a circus or something. With such an image, it's no wonder Sarah can't stand it." No matter what, this Andariel was once her body. "What, Sarah, you don't like the color green?" Lugger was so busy that he rolled into a ball, but he was still distracted and teasing. "It's so green, it's so ugly." Sarah heard this and thrust out the spear sharply in her hand. Even though it was blocked by Andariel's tentacles, it swept out a sword energy towards her green hair. "Oh, gun air. Also, don't think I don't know. In your culture, having green hair on your head is a subtext that your spouse is having an affair." "Eh? You know all this?" Luigi was very surprised. But thinking about it again, as the 7 demon lords of hell, it seems that it is not difficult to understand if he knows something like this. "Ha, is that why you find Duan's green hair more unpleasant to your eyes?" Tia also laughed. "You're still laughing, you're the one who turned me on." Sarah turned around and glared at her. "Hey, you can't say that. Brother Lu and I are legitimately together." Tia immediately countered, "If you have to say it, it was you who cheated on me." "I cheated on you? If I cheated on you with him, wouldn't that mean he cheated on you?" Sarah also said. "Oh, you molested me, I molested him, and he molested you." Tia realized that she was a little confused and quickly turned to look at Lugger for help. "What are you, me, him, he, me, and yours?" Ruger panted while continuing to hide. "Those personal pronouns are all meaningless, just change them to one." "Change it to another one." Tia thought for a moment, "Could it be that I cheated on me?" "The answer is correct, let's do it," Lugger said casually. "But I don't want to think that people have never heard of this 10,000-year-old joke." "What move? What move?" Tia looked confused, and then suddenly said, "Do you want to say that you want me to attack her now?" "No, I'm busy." "Hey, don't look at me with that look." "What do you want to do?" Sarah said in surprise and fear. They suddenly engaged in something else during the battle. There are more black lines on Lugger's head, and he can't come up or go down after holding in one breath, which is very uncomfortable. He feels uncomfortable, and some people feel even worse. It's not like Andariel couldn't understand the language used by these guys over there, so she caught on to the farce. At the beginning, she could still bear it. When Tia actually took the opportunity to attack Sarah, Andariel finally couldn't bear it anymore. He roared to the sky, abandoned Ruger, and turned to attack the two women. UN% at hashtag UN. \U0026 at % hashtag at UN. You guys stop it, be serious, we are fighting hard here. But her anger diverted her hatred. When she attacked the two women immediately stopped fighting and attacked her. This is still a trap. The whole farce was simply played by the three people using that topic. The purpose was to induce Andariel to attack Sarah in turn and abandon Ruger, who was in an increasingly dangerous situation. Seeing that Duan really took the bait, the two were very happy. They immediately launched a fierce attack that had been prepared for a long time, hoping to completely draw the hatred of that guy to themselves. Andariel, after finding out that this was another trap, roared in anger. However, the next moment, she rushed towards the two women with only two demon claws. As for the four poisonous needle tentacles behind her, they took advantage of her turning around and aimed at Luger. Andariel's so-called trick was actually fake. Not good. Luger, be careful. The two women also reacted at this time and wanted to go to rescue, but Andariel's huge body was in the middle. They had no choice but to shout warnings while attacking the poisonous Demon King more fiercely. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 396. But, it's too late. Even if Tia instantly throws 4 times the size of the pineapple, even if Sarah pulls out a second sharp dragon spear and stabs Andariel at the same time, they still can't stop the big guy who is focused on killing Luger from taking out the 4 spears. The tentacles come back. 4 poisonous needle tentacles and 4 green light magic balls completely blocked Luger's retreat. This time, whether he hides forward or backward, jumps up, or stays in place, he will be hit by at least 1 magic ball. Searched Khan on Google. He really didn't expect that Andariel would hate him to such an extent that not even the Lily civil war drama between the two women could draw away her hatred. Could it be that we really have to eat a poisonous ball of light this time? Do you really want to bet on how tough that homemade Tegeman armor is? No, that's not a gamble. It had only been a few minutes since escaping from the Leopard 2A4, but less than half of Luger's Tegeman armor had been corroded by the high-concentration poison cloud. The armor was in far worse condition than the armor of the two women. The poisonous ball of light didn't even dare to touch the two women, so he used the Tegeman armor to hold it up. Forget it. The 4 directions are blocked even if you stay in place, right? Then, like this. In the flash of lightning, Luger actually threw out a string of smoke bombs, covering his surroundings in thick black smoke. However, the smoke screen that used to last for at least tens of seconds or even minutes was now visibly swallowed up and diluted by the poisonous cloud in the surrounding environment. Looking at it like that, I'm afraid that in a few seconds, the surrounding world will turn back into a green poisonous cloud. But it doesn't matter, these few seconds are all Luger wants. While throwing out smoke bombs, he directly summoned a Tiger heavy tank ahead of the artillery in front of him. However, the tank had an empty shell but not even a chassis. Even the shell is not original, but a cosplay of other materials. There are no offensive tanks such as tanks in the Enchanted Dungeon, only tank-destroying assault guns and other supporting defensive vehicles. Even if it shares the same chassis as a serious tank, it still doesn't have a tank body. Ruger's Tiger tank body was made by him out of personal hobby. However, the Tiger, which was famous during World War II, would be arbitrarily suppressed by those little-known cars, not to mention the late Cold War, even in the early stages. In addition, there were too many things that could be used at hand, so he kept this empty shelf in the space as a model. But it is precisely because of this that he would do a little bit here and a little bit there when he had nothing to do. Unknowingly, he had replaced the Tiger, which had only a frame but no chassis, with energy material armor, not just the outer shell, but even the overall frame structure. That's right, it's the same material used in the homemade Tegeman armor he wears. And because the material was used to replace a heavy tank in the late World War II, each piece of energy material armor is thicker than the one worn by Ruger. He was doing this just for fun, and he didn't really expect to drive this thing out one day. It's really too ostentatious. But he really didn't expect that when he took this thing out of the logistics space for the first time, it would be used like this. Take the bullet for yourself. Well, it's a magical skill that blocks the angry attack of the Hell Demon. The tall and square heavy tank shell was moved forward and immediately blocked the attack path of at least 3 poisonous light balls. But under the heavy smoke screen, Andalil could not see this. This is why Lugger no longer needs to act mysterious in front of Rog, but he still sends out a big smoke screen. One of the reasons. In addition, his Tiger heavy tank is too big and can be delivered over a long distance. Obviously, when it is released from the logistics space, it will not be as easy as when he takes out the 88 gun. To put it simply, the forward swing in this process was too obvious, and he was afraid that Andariel would take the opportunity to discover the clues and use some tricks to block his ability to take things out of space in the future. With that guy's ability to control the poison cloud, it's not difficult to do this. Finally, by covering the area with smoke bombs, Lugger can still gain insurance for himself. For example, after throwing out the Tiger heavy tank shield, he immediately jumped into the logistics space and hid. In this way, even if Andariel's poisonous light ball is so powerful that it can even penetrate hundreds of millimeters of energy material armor, it can't really hurt Lugger at all. This move of his can be said to be the most invincible among invincibles and the most insurance among insurances. It's just a bit shameless. But then again, for one of the 7 demon kings of the burning hell, no one else cares about him, and he just beats Lugger, an ordinary person. How shameful is that? Everyone treats each other, the eldest brother let alone the second brother, the third brother and I are the same. Having said that, when Lugger jumped into the logistics space, Taya behind Andariel immediately discovered his move through the logistics space sharing permissions. Seeing that he was such a rogue, Tia tsked at first to express her contempt, but soon she became more playful and wanted to pull Lugger out of it. If that were possible, wouldn't the two of them have the ability to teleport over short distances? Although it can only teleport to the opponent's location. However, as soon as she made a move, she realized that instead of pulling Lu out, she had actually lost contact with the logistics space. Although she was reconnected soon, she saw that Ruger had written a warning to her on the message board. Don't do this. Your behavior will be judged as harmful to me and your permissions will be forcibly closed. What? You are not allowed to use it? Tia pouted her lips, very dissatisfied with the inflexible nature of the system. But the next moment, she didn't have time to care about such trivial matters. Because after the 4 light balls were shot out, Ruger didn't do anything special except putting up a smoke screen. Andariel herself knew from the feedback from the light balls that they had hit one after another. Looking at the smoke screen diluted by the poisonous cloud, there was no trace of Ruger. She naturally thought that the guy was finally killed by her, so she turned around and prepared to deal with the 2 people behind her. This time, Andariel's 6 tentacles were all free, and he started with a string of charged poisonous light cannons. It was certainly weaker than the one she used to clear the rock position on the ground, but it was much stronger than the light balls she casually threw at Ruger. After being swept by this thing, even Sarah didn't dare to resist it, and hurriedly pulled the distracted Tia to run together. Tia came to her senses and didn't dare to delay. She also imitated Ruger and fired a smoke bomb, and also mixed in a few tungsten core fragments to fight back. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 397. At the same time, Tia immediately followed Sarah and jumped to the side. Andariel saw the two people dodge, and the 6 hands of the poisonous light cannon that were charged together followed, and once again staged the scene of sweeping the battlefield with a giant lightsaber. But the strange thing is that the attack distance of the light cannon in her hand is very long, and it can directly hit the wall of the underground tomb. But this highly corrosive magic did not cause any damage to the walls, which was far less serious than the corrosion of the light ball she threw at Ruger before. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Is it because of the cooperation of the poisonous cloud that the power of this light cannon can be fully released? Because there is no poisonous cloud in the wall, the light cannon will not work on them. However, the poisonous clouds in the smoke screen released by Tia were relatively scarce, but after being swept by the light cannon, the black smoke there would instantly dissipate without a trace. At that moment, the process of the surrounding green poisonous clouds occupying the transparent space was clearly visible. Tia, who witnessed this scene, was thoughtful, and always felt that there should be some problems behind this matter that she had not noticed. But after Andariel used the light cannon to clear the smoke at the same time, she could only focus on dodging and had no time to continue exploring. She wanted to send a message to Ruger, who was more useful in such matters. But she glanced at the logistics space and found that Ruger was gone. Could it be? Tia's heart moved, and she was about to cooperate, but she saw that the Tiger heavy tank behind Andariel, which still had most of its body corroded by 3 highly toxic light balls, quietly set up another 88 gun. Sure enough. However, it was this sure enough in her heart that caused her eyes to shrink slightly involuntarily. As a result, Andariel, who seemed to be using all his strength to attack and was unable to pay attention to other things, caught it. She secretly said that it was not good, and immediately opened her 6, tactile, arms like an umbrella, forcibly transforming the poisonous light cannon into a poisonous light protective shield. At the same time, she even added 3 points of poisonous cloud, so that the color of the protective shield instantly changed from grass green to crystal clear emerald green. It was like turning a spherical grass into an emerald in an instant. A crystal ball made of emerald, an emerald ball. Such a change, of course, could not just be beautiful. The tungsten core armor-piercing bullet that Ruger had tried and tested, when it hit the emerald green protective shield, was instantly melted into a ball of liquid metal, just like solder meeting an electric soldering iron. Oh no, it was not that serious. It was the soft metal on the outside of the hardcore armor-piercing bullet that was corroded into a ball of molten iron. Looking at the tungsten core inside, it was still firmly separated from the ball of molten iron, and continued to drill deep into the protective shield. However, although it has not been completely eroded for the time being, its size is constantly shrinking. Almost every centimeter it moves forward in the protective shield, it will be corroded and reduced by the same size. Although this tungsten core bullet was fired from an 88mm cannon, the tungsten core itself is not that big. It won't take long, at least before it breaks through the protective shield and hits Andariel, it will be completely corroded by the protective shield. Damn. Seeing this, Ruger couldn't help but curse in his heart, but hurriedly escaped with another shell and filled it into the barrel. This shell is no longer a hardcore armor-piercing shell, but an APS that he just made when he saw that the situation was not good, which was based on the 105mm rifled gun tail stabilized armor-piercing shell and shrunk to 88mm size. The tail stabilized armor-piercing shell is most suitable for smoothbore guns. Rifled guns need to add a sliding belt to use it. So Ruger was too lazy to use it before. But now, seeing that the old-fashioned hardcore armor-piercing bullet was blocked by Andariel's shield, the only way he could think of was to use this kind of ammunition with a thinner and longer rod, faster speed, and higher penetration depth. With the ability of this kind of ammunition, it should be able to rush over before being corroded by Andariel's shield. He was busy and nervous, but Andariel had finally opened the shield and escaped, and would not let him continue to do it. Before, she thought that Luger had been killed by her, so she turned to the two women. Now that she found Luger alive, her hatred instantly rose back. In addition to the fear of being almost tricked, her new and old hatred for Luger can no longer be described in words. So after discovering that Luger had reloaded the artillery, she kept the shield unfolded, but she exerted force with her feet, and her whole huge body turned like a gyroscope on the spot, and then faced Luger again. At the same time, the two tentacles behind her leaned forward again, punching two small holes in the green light shield, and shot out another poisonous beam there, fiercely shooting at Ruger. Zilla la. The 88 cannon had not had time to fire the shells before it was corroded and destroyed by the poisonous beam. Fortunately, Ruger reacted quickly. When he saw the tentacles behind Andariel move, he immediately jumped out without any intention of fighting. He rolled on the ground, and another 88 cannon was fired. Before the cannon landed steadily, another bullet was ejected from the barrel. Unfortunately, Ruger had not had time to change its equipment, and the barrel was still firing hardcore armor-piercing bullets. This time, the thing was even worse. It was aimed at by Andariel's green beam before it even touched the poisonous light shield. Not long after it flew out, it was corroded. After all, the location of the artillery is often the location where Luger escapes to. Andariel's poisonous beam chases Luger, and naturally hits the artillery barrel. It is also easy to hit the shells in a relatively straight trajectory. She accidentally used an attack and defense trick to knock out a shell, and she was quite proud of it, but she didn't know that this attack had a greater effect behind it. The long 88 cannon she just knocked out was the last one in Luger's space. His 1271 caliber 88mm cannons were actually broken without him noticing. Luger escaped and was about to continue to change the cannon outside. When he put it back, what came out was a 37mm anti-tank cannon that was piled up in the space as a figurine. He couldn't help but tremble. Even the 88 cannon couldn't do anything to Andariel, let alone this thing? He hurriedly looked into the space and found that the area where the artillery was stored had been emptied by himself. Only these small caliber cannons that have little practical significance and are only used for collection as figurines are left. Damn it! He cursed casually, not daring to stop for too long, and simply fired an armor-piercing bullet and dodged to the side. Fortunately, Andariel was not very familiar with this type of artillery weapon. Even though the muzzle was reduced, the bullet was smaller, and the roar was even lower, she still used the original method to deal with the 88 gun to deal with the 37mm anti-tank gun. This gave Ruger a little breathing time. What to do? Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 398. What to do? Ruger's brain was working at high speed. Google search reading. Should I continue to exchange points for 88 guns and confront her head-on? No. That's too inefficient. Now that every second counts, it is impossible to make a real gun from scratch with raw materials. I can only buy finished products directly from the store. In that case, the points consumed are not tens or hundreds of points made by making it myself with raw materials, but thousands or even tens of thousands of points. Even if Ruger has made a lot of points recently, it has only accumulated about 200,000 points so far. In total, it can only make 1288 guns again. In this way, there is no way to break the situation at all, and the points will be used up in 2 or 3 times. Then, change to a cheaper Pak 40? Will it be enough to try a 75mm fin-stabilized armor-piercing discarding sabot shell? Not impossible. At least it is much better than using 88 guns. After all, APS is essentially a sub-caliber discarding sabot shell. This means that the size of its core rod does not necessarily correspond strictly to the size of the gun itself. Ruger can use Pak 40 to shoot an APS that is exactly the same in weight, size, and initial velocity as the 88 gun. It is nothing more than using the same size of rod core, and lengthening the 75mm gun shell of Pak 40 to fill more propellant. This method can produce the same shell power, but the cost is half lower. The cost of the original World War II artillery is 12,000 marks for Pak 40 and 22,000 marks for 88 gun. For Ruger, although there are new changes in the price of artillery, the changes are synchronized and the proportions are still the same. However, this is still not enough for Ruger. Since you have to spend points directly, let's make it more worthwhile. Then, how about going directly to 120mm smoothbore gun? Sorry, that thing is too expensive, Ruger can't afford it. The old World War II gun can be bought with a few thousand points, but that gun, just one gun, requires 70,000 points. What a joke, not to mention that Ruger's situation is not that critical now. Even if it is, he will not spend so much money to buy a thing that can be disassembled from a finished tank at any time. Not to mention, if this kind of gun is made by himself with raw materials, he can make it with a maximum of 1,000 points. 70,000 points. Why not just rob? Because this is faster than robbing, right? At this time, Ruger deeply understood the sentence, "Retribution is a bitch." If I had known this would happen, I really shouldn't have criticized Ruger so harshly before. Especially now that they are basically a family, think about it again, why bother? As a result, he got retribution. Rheinmetall's 55 caliber 120mm smoothbore tank gun was rejected. In fact, it is equivalent to all advanced tank guns in the Middle and Late Cold War being rejected. Of course, Ruger actually does not have many types. The weapons that can be directly purchased in his store, apart from the ones he has already touched and used, are only the original sources of his logistics space, which are available in Grand Theft Auto 5 and OL. There are tanks in Grand Theft Auto OL, but the main battle tank called Rhino is basically a modified Leopard 2A4. So the tank gun that Ruger can buy directly in the store is still the 120mm smoothbore gun of the Rheinmetall series. In addition, there is the main gun of the Gladius invisible tank. But the real prototype of that tank is the PL-01 experimental tank of the country next door to the east of the Zoo family, which has high ambitions and thin lives and will disappear from the world map if it is not careful. And that main gun is still the 120mm smoothbore gun of Rheinmetall. But compared with the 44 caliber gun of the Rhino, which is the same as the Leopard 2A4, the Gladius uses a 55 caliber version of the Leopard 2A6. It can be seen how popular the tank gun of the Zoo family is in a certain period of time. Well, apart from the original weapons of the great car thief Los Santos, and the weapons that Ruger got from the 21st Century Mountain Special Operations Battalion of the Zoo, he could only focus on various weapons in the late World War II. That is, the weapons seized from the underground arsenal, mainly tank destroyers and assault guns. Not to mention, after this sorting, he really found one. The Jaguar heavy tank destroyer, the same model as the legendary Type 8 tank Maus, with a 128mm caliber and a 55 caliber Pak 44 anti-tank gun. From the size alone, this thing is even larger than the 55 caliber 120mm smoothbore gun with 70,000 points. Of course, the performance gap between the two guns is still quite obvious. After all, there is a difference of half a century. But after a little calculation, Ruger gave up on this thing again. Because its price is of course much cheaper than 70,000 points, but if you buy the finished product directly, it will cost about 20,000. But its performance is much higher than that of the 71 caliber 88mm gun, but it is still only capable of being used in the late World War II. Bullying certain local armored units of that era was a great killing move. But against Andariel here, it can only be said that the role played by this gun is not necessarily higher than that of two long 88 guns. If you spend a lot of money and still can only fight a tug of war, then Luger's too bad money is too bad. What should we do? This gun is the largest and most powerful anti-tank gun in the zoo during World War II. If it doesn't work, what other options does Luger have? Don't mention it, there really is one. Anti-tank guns have reached the ceiling, right? It doesn't matter, you can still look at other guns. Oh, it's not the Gustav railway gun. That kind of monster with a caliber of 800 mm, a total length of 43 meters, and a total weight of 1,330 tons, let alone Luger, he can't put it in the logistics space even if he has it. Even if he put it, he can't take it out. Even if he took it out, he can't fire it. Even if he can fire, how stupid Andariel must be to be aimed at such a gun that is taller, bigger, and more accurate than her? It has no practical value at all. Luger was looking for goods in the raw material pool and saw another relatively smaller artillery. The size is not much larger than the long 88 gun. The 17 cm caliber version of the K-18 cannon howitzer. But in fact, the caliber is 173 mm. The PZGR-73 armor-piercing shell used by this guy weighs 71 kg and has a muzzle velocity of 880 m/s. It can penetrate a 255 mm steel plate tilted at 30 degrees at a distance of 1,000 meters. Relatively speaking, the armor-piercing projectile PZGR-39/43 armor-piercing projectile, APK, 104 kg, has a higher initial velocity of 1000 m/s. It can penetrate a 30 degrees inclined, 165 mm thick rolled homogeneous armor plate at a distance of 1000 m. If a 73 kg PZGR-40/43 tungsten core armor-piercing projectile, UPCR, is fired, the initial velocity can reach 1130 m/s, which can penetrate a 30 degrees inclined, 193 mm thick rolled homogeneous armor plate at the same distance. As for the 128 mm caliber 55 times caliber PaK-44 anti-tank gun of the Jaguar above, firing a 283 kg armor-piercing projectile, it can penetrate 230 mm thick steel armor at a shooting distance of 1000 m, and 170 mm at a distance of 3000 m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-chi-ji. Chapter 399. Comparing the above data, it seems that the armor penetration difference between the three is not big. And because the 170 mm K-18 has a relatively lower diameter, it is no longer even a long-barreled cannon in the traditional sense but is classified as a cannon howitzer, and its shell muzzle velocity is obviously lower. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. This is normal. After all, the original design goal of this gun was not anti-tank and anti-armor, but long-range fire support. However, it should be noted that the armor penetration data above are mainly at a distance of 1 km after launch. The current situation is that the straight line distance between Andalil and Luger is no more than 120 meters. Under such conditions, it is really unnecessary to see the penetration depth of 1 km. With such a close distance, in fact, the K-18's shell storage speed will be much higher, and its armor-piercing performance will be much higher relatively speaking. It is obvious that its shell size and maximum weight are the highest, so the energy lost by air resistance when flying in the air must be higher. If the armor-piercing performance difference between the three at 1 km is K-18 PaK-44, long 88 equal 255:231:65/193, this is a relatively close state. Then when the attack distance is reduced to about 100 meters, the penetration depth of K-18 must be relatively higher. What's more, how could Ruger still use the original shells? This thing has a caliber of 173 mm, not to mention that you can directly use the same piercing rod of the 55x caliber 120 mm smoothbore gun DM53 tail stabilized discarding sabot armor piercing projectile. It is not a problem to directly use the piercing rod designed for the next generation 140 mm caliber smoothbore gun. Of course, in fact, the caliber of the smoothbore cannon is getting larger and larger, but the diameter of the APS's penetration rod has not changed much. What has changed is actually the length. For example, the diameter of DM53 rod is 2, and the aspect ratio is about 26:1. The diameter of the ancient DM13 rod was too long and 315 mm, and the length to diameter ratio was about 8:1. However, this does not change the fact that the 173 mm caliber K18 can still fire the same penetrating projectile as the DM53. More importantly, such a gun, including several rounds of adapted APSs directly modified from DM53, and purchased the finished product directly from the store, cost only 23,000 Ruger points in total. Yes, this number is still terrifying. I just hope that its effect is worthy of the price. When Ruger once again used a figure-level cannon to lure Andariel to attack, the Poison Demon King, who had been fooled several times and found that his new cannon was no longer fearful, directly let the cannon pass this time. Directly chased the poisonous light cannon behind Lugger's butt and hit him. In view of this, Ruger simply fired off smoke bombs again, and at the same time threw 2 or 3 sets of heavy tank hulls in front of him. These car shells are not the material energy armor version of the previous Tiger, but composite armor that has just come off the production line and is specifically designed to block gunfire. It is conceivable that their effect will not be very good. However, their role itself is not here. It was used to block guns, yes, but more importantly, it was used to block Andariel's sight. The black smoke screen will be swallowed up by the poisonous cloud and quickly expire. These iron bumps can at least last a little longer. At the same time, Lugger lay directly on the ground, relying only on the pulleys on the breastplate and the rocket booster to move near the wreckage of the previous artillery pieces, and suddenly replace the remains of an 88-year-old cannon with the barrel of the K18 that just came out of the oven. Well, that's right, it's another version with only the gun body and no gun mount. In this way, its size can be controlled to be smaller, and it will not be too eye-catching compared to the remains of the Changbaba cannon. Sure enough, Andariel saw black smoke reappearing over there, and at the same time, there were more tank-like things inside, and he immediately spent most of his energy on dealing with them. You must know that she believed too much in her poisonous light ball before. After throwing 3 shots at this kind of thing, she assumed that Lugger had been killed by her. As a result, she turned around and was tricked by him again. So this time she directly made up her mind, even if the light cannon magic that maintained the offensive and defensive protective cover did not stop, everything in the black smoke would be corroded. After seeing Lugger's bones, she will turn around and leave. As for what to do with the 2 armored female warriors behind them during this period of time, then just use the protective shield to resist. Even though Taya and Sarah used various high-power moves to hit him in turn, Andariel insisted that Lugger would not let go. This shows how much she hates Lugger. Luge, who was lying on the ground secretly rubbing her sex, saw her like this, and couldn't help but break into a cold sweat on his back. The heart says, what on earth did he do? Was it the hatred for killing his father and the hatred for taking his wife away, or was it because he was in chaos and finally abandoned her? Wasn't it just that he had cheated on her a few times, that's all? Although he was secretly complaining, his hands were not idle at all. I completely didn't realize that my current behavior was yet another sinister act. And this time, it was quite dark. This 173 mm cannon howitzer has a diameter of 50 and a barrel length of more than 8.5 meters, 8,625 meters. The long 88 gun has a diameter of 71 times and is only over 6 meters long. The barrel of this thing alone weighs nearly 10 tons. It was also because of this that this time Ruger failed to fire the cannon as soon as he took it out. But it seems that this cannot be said. Because, even after all his efforts, he still hasn't been able to get the barrel out successfully. Why? Didn't he get a tank weighing dozens of tons out before? Yes, that's right. If he just found a place to throw it, he would have gotten it out long ago. The problem is, wasn't he lying flat on the ground, and quietly thrusting his long, thick, and heavy thing towards Andariel's vitals? Ahem, it seems ambiguous. Get the point. In short, the posture is wrong and the requirements are high. Of course, he can't do it for a while. Seeing that the black smoke over there was almost swallowed up by the poisonous cloud again, and even the 3 sets of modified Leopard tanks with tilted composite armor left on the ground were almost completely melted by Andariel's poisonous light cannon, Ruger became more and more anxious. No, if it goes on like this, it will be too late. Ruger estimated that it was not good, and he gritted his teeth and used telekinesis to lift the nearly 10-ton thing again. He just poked the barrel into the wreckage of the artillery in front and fired at Andariel's side. Boom! A sound that was far more violent, dull, and long than the previous cannons sounded, and the tungsten alloy rod with a length-to-diameter ratio of 26:1, the same as the DM-53, flew towards Andariel at a speed no less than 6 times the speed of sound. Andariel had actually noticed that there was a problem when Ruger poked the cannon forcibly, and turned around to move the light cannon over here. But the distance between the two was not far, and the rod could fly more than 2,000 meters in 1 second, which meant that it took less than 0.1 second or even 0.05 seconds from the time it flew out of the muzzle to the time it hit Andariel's protective shield. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 400. Andariel had no time to make any other moves. When she just turned her front half to face Ruger, the piercing rod had already penetrated the protective shield that had blocked countless artillery fire before, and directly hit her right arm. The huge kinetic energy instantly penetrated her skin, flesh, and bones, and even directly blew her huge right arm away. If her body was not strong enough, this armor-piercing bullet would have shattered most of her body by the huge kinetic energy. From this point of view, Andariel, a humanoid demon king, is really like a human tank. Awoo! Andariel was in pain and wailed, but no matter how severe the pain of a broken arm was, it was not as painful as the pain of Ruger's repeated success in sneaking up on her. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. The loss of an arm directly caused her to be unable to maintain both the protective shield and the poisonous light cannon at the same time. But there were obviously 2 aggressive women behind her. Now, giving up the protective shield would only make her die faster. So, she simply kicked her legs to the right and rushed directly to Luger. The sharp claws of her left hand kept waving forward, and the fang-like light blades kept hitting Luger like heavy machine gun bullets. Luger saw that although the shell successfully hit her, it only broke her arm, which was a bit regrettable. Originally, this gun had no gun mount, and most of the recoil when firing had to be borne by him. Fortunately, this gun itself is heavy enough. Although the shell has a large mass and a faster speed, according to the law of conservation of momentum, after its recoil is distributed to the 10-ton barrel, the instantaneous acceleration that the barrel can get will be relatively low. The instantaneous pressure on Luger will also be small. But the total energy is still considerable. Fortunately, with the cooperation of various methods including the full power of telekinesis, he still succeeded in stopping the gun, and the muzzle did not deviate too much. In this way, he now has a chance to put away his slightly lost mood and try to load a new bullet into the barrel again. In order to accomplish this, especially to support the terrifying tonnage of heavy artillery and heavy bullets, he kept stabbing himself with mental recovery potions and physical recovery potions like whack-a-mole. In this way, he can ensure that his telekinetic ability will not exhaust his physical strength and spirit. But even so, reloading a 10-ton cannon with only the barrel cannot be completed in just a few seconds. Even if he saw Andariel rushing towards him, he could only grit his teeth and continue to persevere. The green fang magic that the guy casually shot at him, which looked like a wind blade and a heavy machine gun bullet, he could only rely on his outer armor to withstand it. However, even so, when he was about to pull down the trigger again, Andariel had already rushed to a place not far in front of the muzzle. Seeing that he was about to fire again, Andariel actually jumped up, and his huge body over 5 meters tall flew directly into the air. At the same time, she raised her long claws high, intending to use the momentum of the fall to split the cannon and lugger into several pieces with one claw. However, the heavy cannon in Lugger's hand did not have a gun mount, and it was obviously impossible to lift the nearly 10-ton cannon body and shoot it into the sky. Although he still had infinite nostalgia for the heavy cannon with tens of thousands of points, Lugger still resisted the feeling of heartbreak, took out 2 rocket boosters again, and fired them forward. Buzz. With the help of the thrust of the rocket engine, he, who was still lying on the flatbed, quickly hid to the back, temporarily escaping from Andariel's palm method that fell from the sky. No, it was a claw method. But the Krupp 17-118 heavy cannon howitzer was not spared, and was hit hard by Andariel's left claw and directly broke into several sections. After breaking the cannon that broke her arm, Andariel was still furious, and looked at the culprit who was running away with red eyes. Howl. Another long howl, like the charge before the general attack. Andariel stretched out her hand to the wreckage of the heavy artillery and was about to chase Ruger. However, when her left arm touched the wreckage, there was a bang, and the wreckage was blown into a cloud of dust. It turned out that before Ruger retreated, he left a large amount of plastic explosives under the barrel. And on the top of the explosives was a layer of tungsten alloy steel balls spread out. When Andariel rushed forward, Ruger used the laser detonator in his hand to detonate the detonator on the plastic explosive. In an instant, the explosives under the wreckage of the heavy artillery exploded like a directional fragmentation anti-infantry mine. Well, this kind of thing should be called a booby trap. Lugger's booby trap was set in a hurry, and he subconsciously felt sorry for the tens of thousands of points, so he didn't control the amount of explosives at all. Well, he didn't control it at all. As we all know, the main explosive of the most common plastic explosive in the world is RDX, with a content of at least 90%. So even with plasticizers, the explosive equivalent of this thing is more than 13 times that of TNT. Lugger didn't control the amount well, and accidentally spread at least dozens of kilograms of this thing there. As a result, after it was detonated, there was no need for the tungsten alloy steel balls on the surface that were blown up by the blast wave to cause damage. It was the blast wave itself that hit Andariel's left arm hard, who had left the protective shield for the attack. At the moment of impact, it was as if a huge hammer hit Andariel's left forearm from bottom to top. Fortunately, her protective shield had not ended yet. After she subconsciously retracted her arm, the remaining shockwave energy was blocked by the poisonous light shield. At this time, the tungsten alloy steel balls that flew over at high speed began to show their evilness. I am afraid that 2 or 3 out of every 10 balls could pass through the protective shield without being corroded. And 2 or 3 out of every 10 balls that passed through could penetrate Andariel's skin, splashing blood on her body. On the other hand, although Ruger's position was lower than the horizontal plane where the tungsten alloy steel balls were spread, it meant that the steel balls that were fired from the bottom to the top by the explosives could hardly attack him directly, but the shock wave of the explosives was still transmitted evenly to the surroundings. However, when this shock wave reached him lying on the flat trolley, most of the energy was transformed into kinetic energy for him to continue running backwards, which made him leave Andariel faster and faster. It must be said that this time, he actually felt a little wrong. Seeing him retreating rapidly, Andariel, who was tricked by him again, looked at him with anger and hatred, and fear appeared for the first time. There was no way. In Andariel's opinion, the human over there had set a super chain trap for him in a flash. Think about it, when that guy deliberately used small caliber artillery that posed no threat to him, he was setting a trap for himself.